Welcome to the Fearlessly Authentic Sash and Soul podcast. In each episode, we'll explore the power of embracing authenticity with a winning mindset and overall well-being to help you navigate life and the pageant world with confidence and resilience. I'm Rayanna Johnson, former Miss Wisconsin and founder of Fearlessly Authentic Coaching. So let's dive in. Welcome to Sash and Soul. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Sash and Soul. I'm really excited, and it's a little bittersweet to bring you the last episode of the Crowned and Candid series this season, but it is with a really excellent person to share that with. I have with me today Miss Virginia 2024. This is Carlehr Swanson, and her overall message, I can already tell, is going to be like woven throughout this episode as the perfect way to wrap up this series and pour love and light into all of you as you go into whatever your next venture is. So I asked Carlehr what her overall legacy is and her message. And she said, just that everyone she encounters sees God's light. She said, move me out of the way. This is about the people that I encounter along the way on this journey. And I have chills thinking about that, because that's such a beautiful visual to think about. I'm just the vessel. I'm just here doing amazing things and hoping that people feel special and loved along the way. So with that, welcome, Carlehr. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's going to be a good chat. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I am from Richmond, Virginia, the capital of Virginia, born and raised. And growing up, music and faith and education have all been a big part of my life. I started singing when I was 6 years old, and then I started classical piano lessons when I was 7 years old. And I did that from 7 to 18, went off to college, and I majored in music. And somewhere along the way, I was performing at a funeral. And there was a pageant director in the audience. And she said, wow, you have a great talent. Would you like to do this pageant? And I really didn't think much about it. I said, oh, this will be great. I get to perform my talent on a big stage. A lot of people will see it. I didn't think about oh, you're kind of shy and you don't like speaking in front of people or walking in front of people. But I said yes. And I was second runner up in that pageant. And that was almost 10 years ago. And it's been a dream come true, because in my high school yearbook, I wrote it that I wanted to go to Miss America and have this opportunity. And it's really been just a manifestation of all of those things coming together: my faith, my education, music. So perfect timing.
Absolutely. I'm all about the perfect timing. Everything lines up exactly how it's supposed to. And it's amazing when you can look back on your journey and just see where you've been placed in certain experiences, or people have been placed, or situations have been placed right in your path in the perfect way for you to learn and grow, or to access some kind of a resource. And it sounds like maybe you've had a similar experience with that.
I have. So thinking about just my first involvement in pageants, and then thinking about the local directors that I've encountered along the way, and just thinking about this time as being Miss Virginia. I'm 28. So this was the last time that I could compete. I've aged out 3 times before this chance. So it was just, meant to be in that way. But also I'm a PhD student. And I'm in the 4th year. So that means I finished all of my coursework, my qualifying exams. So it was just the perfect time to kind of take a detour and be Miss Virginia for the year.
How many times did you compete on the Miss Virginia stage?
I competed 6 times, spanned out over the course of 10 years.
What was that like for you to come back over and over and over again?
It was difficult. I think sometimes it's just hard to be in a field where you're constantly being judged. It's really easy to compare yourself to other girls. And throughout that journey, I thought maybe if I talked more, maybe if I was more bubbly, or if I looked like this, or if I did this, or I dressed like that. So every year you're kind of finding ways to tweak things or do things better. And I think what I realized that last year was, yes, there's always things that we can improve on. But once I finally accepted, this is who I am, this is what I can bring to this position, this is why I'm special, that acceptance, I think, led me to winning and just having this year, because I realized that the people that I'll encounter this year need the things that I have. They need, the little silly quirks that I have, the way I communicate with people, the way, I interact with them. So it was finally an acceptance of I am enough to do this.
Yeah. I I love like hearing about everyone's experiences and how they're different one year after the next at state and like what valuable lessons that they learned. And I look back at my experience too. I competed for Miss Wisconsin 4 times, and every year was just vastly different from the year before. Did you experience that too?
I did. So I started Miss in eight. So I did some years of teen and then went right into Miss at 18. And that first year I went, I was just like, this is fun. I'm just here to meet people and to have the experience. And then the second year I went, I was third runner up and I didn't expect it. And it was kind of a whirlwind. But I think because that happened unexpectedly. The next year, I was kind of hyper focused on, okay, I was third runner up. That means I can win this if I just prepare properly. And so I kind of psyched myself out of it, kind of over preparing, over analyzing, trying to turn into something that I thought would be winning. Um, so that happened. And then I did it again, and I was third runner up, and then I was fourth runner up. So it was kind of difficult because I said, this is getting worse, and I'm putting all of my energy into this, my community service, my public speaking, all of these things. Um, and then I thought, okay, I'm done. I was third runner up twice, I was fourth runner up. I don't want to see how worse this can get. And I think I made all of these excuses of why I can't do it again. I can't do it again because of school. I can't do it again because there's only one local pageant. I can't do it again. And all of those worries just kind of figured themselves out. And I ended up doing it again. But again, it was just that finally having that acceptance of I'm enough to do this. And a realization that I'm blessed either way. Like I don't need the title to define me. Like I'm doing meaningful work. I see the impact I'm having on my community, the impact I'm having in my PhD program. So in that final moment of me and the first runner up, I was truly thinking I'm blessed either way. Either way, I'm going to be blessed and I have a blessing to walk into.
I think the journey can be so interesting. Sometimes I was thinking about this the other day that like we do pageants to grow and to become, bigger, better versions of ourselves and to like improve and to do great things for the community and for the people around us in service and to build our career and all of these really amazing things. And yet sometimes I think it's really common to lose ourselves in it. And it's when we find ourselves again that everything just kind of works out. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I think that's definitely what happened. I think when I was 18, I was just kind of carefree and I just wanted to enjoy it and soak in the process. I I had fun. I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I grew. And then as soon as I started to hyper focus on, okay, now what is everyone else doing? What are all of these directors saying? What should people be doing? Who did they pick last year? Maybe if I did more like this, I would have a better chance. And that kind of spiraled over the years, especially being in the top five so many times and being so close. Um, yeah, but I think it was finally once I had that moment of finding myself again. What is my purpose? I think the purpose really led me back to just being who I am. Because that was one of the things that I started. Initially I got involved for performing and music, but that 18-year-old passion was being around the girls and the networking and seeing everyone making a difference in their community and knowing that I could make a difference. So just kind of reuniting with that purpose really helped me just calm myself and showing up as my authentic self.
What was going through your mind when you were standing there as one of the top two?
Strangely, I was very calm, which has never happened before. Normally, I can like feel my breath inside my body and my chest
Hmm.
going up and down. But I was just very calm, and then just kind of realizing, okay, well, at least I did better than the other time, so I'm not going out worse than it started. But then just having acceptance that I had did my best, that I tried all I could do. It was my last chance, so I left it all out there on the stage. But again, just knowing that I'm blessed either way. That's what I kind of kept repeating to myself when we're waiting and they're listing all of those long things that they list out. I was thinking,
Yeah.
I'm blessed either way.
Yeah. And then your name was called as the winner.
Mhm.
When did it hit you that it was real?
I kind of had an out of body experience for a moment. But I just immediately started crying, and I just thought about that 10-year journey of thinking I wasn't good enough or thinking I couldn't do this or spending time trying to be someone else. I felt that in that moment, all of that hard work had paid off, and I realized that, that process wasn't wasted. It was just preparing me for that moment. And then, so I really love the Miss Virginia song. We have a Miss Virginia song, and all of those other years, I would sit there and I would just kind of sing the song. And I remember that I had a moment where I kind of came back and I'm realizing everything that's happening. And then I just heard the Miss VA, and then I cried more. So,
Was it anything like what you had dreamt it would be?
no, I mean, I had seen the vision. I knew that it could happen. There was a possibility, but I didn't imagine how emotional I would be. I didn't imagine um, how painful it was initially not having that moment. I felt those were also a part of the tears, just having that emotion from the years of like trying and not accomplishing it. I didn't imagine that I would just have that overwhelming sense of emotion. It was uncontrollable.
You had spent almost a decade at that point going after this goal. How similar and or different was the job from what you had thought it was going to be?
I think it was similar in that I knew what to expect in ways. I knew about our school tour, so I knew I would be busy every day of the week. And that way, I knew about sponsor visits, I knew about social media responsibility, I knew all of those things. I think kind of what you said in the beginning, I didn't realize that I felt like I grew a lot through that 10-year process. And then once you become a state title holder, there's kind of more to that process, other things to grow. So I think I really found my voice throughout this year, being more confident in my abilities and who I am and what I bring to the table. Um, and I think balancing, I think I'm the type of person who likes to just give their full energy to something, and that's a great benefit, but also realizing that you need time to take care of yourself and blocking out time on your schedule to have those moments. So I think I realized it would be a full-time job, but also realizing the ways that I still need to grow.
We do so much work to get ourselves mentally prepared for the job and put ourselves in the shoes of the title holder and what is our game plan and visualize it because we know like that's the big picture, that's the focus, like we're here for the job when we're, there for competition week. But then, like you're saying, you get into it and I think oftentimes like we don't expect that, we're riding this high of like I'm ready, I'm so prepared, I can see myself doing this. And then you actually get the job and you're like, wait, what? Like, what am I doing? Did you have moments of that, like, I kind of want to call it imposter syndrome-esque experience?
Yes. Yes, and I think one great thing that was really helpful, I had a forever Miss Virginia come up to me right after I was crowned. She said, later tonight, when you're in your hotel room, you're going to feel like, maybe you can't do this. What just happened? And so I think her pulling me aside and telling me that immediately was very helpful because in those moments, I reflected on what she told me and I realized that, okay, I'm not alone in this. Everyone must have had that same feeling if she thought it was important to tell me that. And I think just not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, starting to compare yourselves. Social media, online forums can be very discouraging. So shutting out the outside noise and just focusing on how I can do the best job because there is a little imposter syndrome that happens. But I realized um, the growth really came from thinking, okay, if someone's saying this about me, why do I believe this is true? It's not really their problem, it's my problem to figure out, what part of this do I believe? And so that was something that was really helpful this year, realizing, okay, it's not really about what they think, it's about what I think about myself and how can I use this to figure out why is this bothering me and how can I grow from that?
That's a lot of internal work. Like that's hard work. Did you feel like you were, I mean, honestly, like I know, like doing that, like self-reflection of like, like it's so easy to fall into like screw the haters kind of mindset, but to actually sit back and be like, well, is any piece of this true? And if so, like, what do I do with that? And if it's not true, okay, then what do I do with like this hurt that someone else may be feeling this way about me? Right?
Yeah, I think that was really helpful advice to receive. Like, if people think, like, if you feel like you're not good enough, and then someone says, you're not good enough, or, just mean things that people can say, why do you feel that it's true, or why is this bothering you? And I think that's where the growth came from, because I think I've always been kind of a timid person, or a shy person, or someone who's worried about, am I doing a good job? Do they think I'm doing a good job? And this year was the first time I felt like I am doing a good job. I see the impact I'm having. It's not really about what other people think. It's about, what the numbers say, what the impact says, the lives that I'm touching every day.
Yeah. Okay. I have not asked anyone about this yet, but what was the most helpful thing that you had received within your circle of support throughout this journey?
Definitely my forever Miss Virginia sisters telling me about their years, the things that they had experienced, especially the one that told me about, later tonight, you're going to feel like, what's happening? What's going on? Maybe I don't deserve this. But also thinking about what about this, what people say or advice, why is this resonating with you? Why is this bothering you? Always to challenge yourself. Why is this bothering me? And to also not being afraid to speak out. I think sometimes as state title holders, you're a little afraid. You're the brand. You want to be perfect as you can be or as you can appear to be. But I think speaking your opinion, saying the things that you like, or speaking up for other contestants, things like that, I think it's important to be able to still have a voice, even though you're the voice of an organization.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with a client today about honesty. Like in interview, I think, as we're talking about preparing for competition and stuff, she's struggling with not wanting to be misunderstood about certain aspects of her. And I was like, all right, well, one of the key things of being authentic is honesty. And and to be able to do that, you also have to trust that you're going to show up and speak your truth in a way that is respectful, and that you can trust that you will show up professionally and articulately in that. And I mean, that's part of the work and part of the skill building and stuff, right? But that honesty with yourself and honesty with the people around you, I think is what makes you a raw and real person as a title holder, not putting on some kind of a face.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I think for me, I don't like conflict. I'm very avoidant of conflict, or just hurting people's feelings or just saying things that people might not like. But I realize as a title holder, no matter how concerned you are about people's feelings or conflict, it still arises. So it's better, like you said, to be honest, to confront these things head on. And I think as someone who values their self as an authentic person, it's again being able to be honest and to be authentic, even when it's not a happy situation or it's a conflict driven situation.
How did this idea of like move me out of the way, this is about God's purpose, assist you in times of conflict?
Oh, yes. When I realized it wasn't about me, it was about the people that I meet, the person that's going to be Miss Virginia next, doing his work in his kingdom. And I think it's something that really started from being a performer. Because I think in music, someone's on a stage and it's glitz and it's glam, and you're there to entertain people. But I think it's important to realize that these gifts and these talents that we use to entertain people, they aren't for us, and we don't drive them. They're, like you said in the beginning, we're being vessels. So I think, knowing how important it is, especially with the school tour that I've gone on, that when I arrive at these schools, yes, I'm Miss Virginia, but also, what am I saying to these kids? I have a amazing opportunity to impact young people to change their lives. It only takes one person to say one thing that changes someone's lives. And I have this unique opportunity for a year to meet thousands and thousands of children. So when I show up, I didn't want to show, okay, I had to drive 5 hours to get here, and tomorrow I'm driving 5 more hours, and the schedule is very difficult. I wanted to be the best I could be and just let that light shine.
I had an interesting question from a client as well this week that I'd love to hear your perspective on. She asked, what was one tool that you used when you showed up at appearances to leave a mark or to be memorable?
Hmm. I love that. I loved the school tour. And the thing about the school tour, sometimes I would have hundreds and hundreds of kids. And so I would ask them, does anyone have questions? And I couldn't get to all of them. So once I realized, the kids are sad when you can't get to all of them, I started standing by the door at the end of all of my school visits. So as each child left, they got a chance to talk to me or just tell me what resonated with them or give me a hug or something that they had drew. And I realized that really made a difference in the appearances because some kids are a little shy, like I was in school. Some kids don't have a question, and it gave everyone a moment to be seen and to have their voice heard.
That is beautiful. It's like a receiving line.
Yeah.
And in so many ways, like what you would do at the end of a church service or at a wedding, where like you just really take that moment to make sure that every person is seen. That that's beautiful.
And I think, yes, it was impactful for them. They got to talk to Miss Virginia, but I think it was just so moving to me because a lot of my community service initiative, I talk about my grandmother Gladys. So there were so many kids that would come up to me and say, my grandma's name is Gladys, or, I play a musical instrument, or I would ask, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they would ask really deep, kind of provoking questions like, what if I don't know what I want to do? Or so it was really moving to me to see like what I said resonated with them, but also that it's a purpose in every story that we share.
And I think you had said this or alluded to this earlier too. Like you'll never really know the impact that you leave, but what a great way to have that gentle reminder that just showing up and being real and being open and being honest with the people that you meet, like can really create these like micro connections where they just find something in you that they relate to. And that can be really inspiring for people. And it can be really connective for people when they maybe feel a little bit more alone.
Yeah. Yes. And I think sometimes when you're a state title holder, people are really excited to meet you. They're really excited. They have a lot of questions. They want to know everything about you. But I've always made it a focus of mine whenever I have a conversation with someone, I like to ask them more questions than they ask me. And that I do that because I want to know their story. I want them to know that, yes, you're interested in me because I'm this figure, but I'm interested in you because you're a human and I see your heart and I want to know more about you. So I always make it a focus. I want to know about you. I want to know your story.
Earlier, you talked about maintaining your balance because you always want to do more and put yourself out there more. And I think that is so common for women in pageantry. And how what did you do in times when you felt a little burnt out to recoup that energy? And then what tools did you start to use to maintain your energy and your balance?
Yes. Whew. Okay. So praying was a big thing that helped me be realigned during those times. Going to the gym, just doing something to focus on me, making the healthy choice. Cooking is really difficult to cook when you're constantly on the road. So making those times to have home cooked meals, staying connected to my community, whether that's talking to a best friend in the car while you're on a long drive or just making time to have those family dinners. And I think, so that was what I used in the beginning, but what I started to do to avoid that burnout, just saying no. And I think as a title holder, you don't want to say no. You've waited all of this time to have this moment. You don't want to upset people. You don't want to let people down in some cases. But it got to a point where I was sick and I was losing my voice. And that's something very difficult as a singer to experience. So I realized, okay, yes, you can go, 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 but it's not great for your health. And if you can't pour from an empty tank. So realizing that sometimes you have to say no, and it's okay to take time off. It's okay to block out the schedule and say, okay, there's nothing going on this day. Maybe I'll go get a massage. Maybe I'll get a facial. So really starting to be more concerned with the time and knowing that it's not selfish to have self-care time.
How did your preparation for Miss America look?
It was a whirlwind. It was very exciting. But also I had a school tour. I've went to 70 schools over the course of this year, so I had that every day. I had mock interviews every Sunday virtually, and I had walking on Wednesdays along with alterations to my clothing. So it was very um, difficult in a way because the appearances didn't stop, the sponsor visits didn't stop. But I think it really taught me management and that if you want to do something, you can do it because I was in the car having interview prep or listening to the news. I really learned how to manage my time in a useful and effective way. Um, yeah, it was a whirlwind. And I think the funniest part about this process is that I had a dress that was made. And, on Christmas Day, I was picking it up. On Christmas Eve, I was getting the final touches. So it's when you want to be a state title holder, it's just you see the glitz and the glam, but it's really, being somewhere on Christmas Day, getting your last fitting, trying to fit everything in to be the best that you can be, no matter, what time it is, what the schedule looks like.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you brought up like the holidays and giving up time on your holidays with family and your traditions. Because I was just going to ask you, what did you sacrifice throughout your year that you're excited to get back in your life after the next couple of weeks are up?
Ooh, being very involved in school. So at school, I'm a PhD student, but all of our PhD students, we teach a course. So I'm really excited to get back to my college students. I miss them and being involved in my studies and reading more and writing more. I also taught private piano lessons and voice lessons. So I miss my little students. I love being involved in my musical communities and also singing and playing the piano at church. I've still been able to go to church throughout this year, but just being more involved. And I miss having the rehearsals and seeing that community and being able to lead the choir in that way. So just returning to those communities that really poured a lot into me.
How are you going to be different showing up in those communities now than you were a year ago?
Yeah, I think I'm more confident in my abilities. To me, I've always felt worried, am I doing it right? Is this good? Will they like it? And I think being a state title holder, I think after the first 3 months, you're like, well, it just is what it is. And it's not in a negative way saying that you're not trying your best, but it's just saying that I'm doing my best. I'm showing up. I'm on time. I put a lot of effort and energy into this. I've practiced. I've done what I can. Why wouldn't I feel confident in showing up? So I think just knowing that I put the work in to do the things that I've set out to do, and just feeling assured in that.
Mm-hmm. All right, we kind of segued away from Miss America stuff because I had asked you about your Miss America prep. What was your mental prep like for Miss America versus what your mental prep had been like for Miss Virginia?
Hmm. I think it was different in ways because when I was preparing for Miss Virginia, um, I was writing these qualifying exams. So I had 3 essays due and they were 20 pages each. And so that was the week right before Miss Virginia. So I was like really in my books. And I think I was really kind of hyper focused on Miss Virginia and hyper focused on Miss America, but in a different way because I still had so many other responsibilities. And I think one thing that kept me mentally strong was, of course, my faith and praying, but knowing that Miss America is the goal. And no matter how difficult the other appearances were making sure that I spent that time every night, walking or answering my interview questions or making sure I'm staying up with the news. So knowing that there's a lot happening, but making sure I carve out this time every day to make that a reality.
What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned competing at Miss America?
I think overall, I just feel like nothing's wasted. And the Bible tells us to write the vision and make it plain. And I wrote it. I wrote it down that I wanted to go to Miss America in my high school yearbook. So there were many times that week I just felt like I'm here. God did it. Like this happened. This was a dream that became a reality. And it just felt more surreal because so many times I thought it was over. I thought it had ended. So that was one thing. And then just the sisterhood, seeing how is Miss America doesn't really feel like a competition. It's like seeing friends is coming together with ladies from all across the state and they're helping each other and you're relying on your roommate during the week and you're starting to help each other with your social media posts. So just realizing, I mean, I've seen the sisterhood on the state level, but just seeing it at a greater magnitude was so special.
Have loved that about the state season this year. All of the collabs on TikToks and Instagram posts between the delegates at each state competition, just like the whole group coming together. Like it's really like it's pulling people in and really showing that like relevancy to the organization, like that constant question that we get asked of like, is Miss America still relevant as part of your preparation for competition, right? And like I think that in and of itself is showing that it's relevant, is just how real everybody is. And when you get together, it truly is just like a bunch of friends hanging out.
Yes, and I think that's something so special about the state class is because we all kind of went through that same process. Maybe, doing your state competition multiple times or just the mental game or the mental prep that you take to get to that moment. And when you hear, other state title holders, they talk about these things, the mental game and the balancing and the schedule. So I think we kind of all bond through having that shared experience.
Yeah, 100%. How did you handle the emotional like letdown after Miss America was done?
I I think there's an initial sadness because you want it and you prepped for it. But then you have that moment of, I'm still my state title holder and there's still work to be done and there's still a difference that I can make. And I think competing so many times, I've truly realized that whoever will, it's what God had for them that year, the people that they meet, the things that they do, that's what God had for them. And whatever happens with, my placement is what God had for me. And there's always something to learn from that situation. But there was some initial sadness, and I had to go get my pizza, and
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was very much my experience and what I've heard from a lot of others too. There's like this very drastic mix of emotions, this dichotomy of emotions that are so conflicting of like the like, oh my gosh, I just did that thing. And the gratitude and the memories that you're like processing from the whole experience and the whirlwind that it was. And then also this like, oh my gosh, like it's over. Like it felt like it took so much energy and time to get here and now it's done. And like that's it. And like, I'm over a decade out and I still have Miss America dreams. Like I'll wake up and be like, oh my gosh, like I just had a dream that I was preparing to compete at Miss America. And then again, that realization of like, nope, that'll never happen again because it is a once in a lifetime thing.
and I think it being once in a lifetime thing makes it a little difficult at times because you always think about what could I have done better or what could I have changed or if I had one more opportunity, I would try it this way. But I think it's always just important to kind of just accept that, I did the best that I could do in that moment. I did the best with what I had and what I could do. So that's also been a part of it. But I think one special thing that made it better afterwards, we had catered Chipotle backstage. And so all of the ladies, we went and got our little Chipotle bowls, and then someone put the pageant live stream on their phone. So we were all backstage watching the pageant, eating our Chipotle bowls.
Oh. I love that. Yeah, like that's kind of a bonding experience, right? Mine was one of the years that they had us sitting on stage watching the competition. So we all kind of had that unique experience of sitting there and cheering on the girls and also processing our emotions of having not made it into finals at the same time. It was just like such a weird experience. All right. So when you came back from Miss America, um, how did you pick back up and go full steam rather into like doing all the things that you wanted to do without having to worry about prepping for Miss America anymore? And now we're just being Miss Virginia.
Yes. It was great because it felt like a little break from what I was used to. So when I went back to like my school tour, I felt refreshed and kind of rejuvenated. And I also started to think about more so because I had more of the time to think about, okay, now what do I want to do with my community service initiative? What are my future goals? So I was able to collaborate with some universities because I want to be a professor. I was able to plan some concert series that I were able to do and also partner with some nonprofits, Sing for Hope and Music and Memory. So after Miss America, I just kind of had the mental freeness to focus on some of the goals that I had and also focus on some recruitment goals that I had for the organization through social media and going to different colleges. So I was able to just have that capacity to accomplish those goals.
Talk a little bit more about your initiative and some of your favorite accomplishments that you had this year.
So, my community service initiative is called Music is Unity. I started it in the eighth grade. I went to visit my grandmother in a rehabilitation center. She had fractured her back. And she hated being in this place because everyone knew my grandma Gladys. Everyone in school, everyone in the neighborhood, everyone at church. So she hated being isolated. And so I would go and visit Grandma Gladys every day and I would sing and I would play songs on the piano. And I realized that a lot of the other patients there would come and they would watch these performances because they didn't have visitors. And so I went back to school. I told all of the kids in my music class that music isn't just about being on a stage. It can make people feel something. It can make them feel less lonely. So since the eighth grade, I started planning these concerts in nursing homes and going into schools and talking about the importance of music. And so that's kind of expanded into me showing other young people throughout my school tour how they can take music and be a vehicle to help connect people no matter their backgrounds, the demographic. And through Music is Unity, I've been able to not only partner with my school tour and talk to kids about positive, healthy choices, but how music is a healthy choice, but also partnerships with these nonprofits. So Sing for Hope, they have an initiative where they place colorful pianos in random places across America. And they place these piano in places to encourage people to make music and to come together no matter where they are. You might see these in subway stations or airports just to make this music. And they have a branch in schools in Newport News, which is a city in Virginia. So I've been able to go to these schools and play their pianos and have performances for their students and talk about music as unity. And I've also been able to partner with Music in Memory because another part of my grandmother Gladys, she had Alzheimer's. And what I realized is that, she couldn't remember simple things like what she had just ate, but she could remember the songs that we, sang in church when I was growing up. So I would sing with her and, play music that she liked. And so with this partnership with Music is Memory, I've been able to, talk about the scientific evidence that music improves memory, that music can be used for a myriad of memory issues, and also, do that research, show that research, and go into nursing homes and talk about how their memory care units need to include music. So those have been a few things. Also, another exciting thing, I had a concert at the VA hospital here in Virginia, in Richmond. And so I say music is unity, but this was the first time I saw it. They had me in the hospital, just in the middle, close to their cafe area. And while I was singing and playing, I saw nurses stop and doctors stop and patients and residents. And so anyone that was there, they just kind of stopped and sang along with me at this concert that I had. And I have this video where you just pan the room and you see people just stop in their tracks and sing along. So that was a really exciting moment.
That's so cool. It's those things that are going to stick with you forever. And when people ask you about your experience as Miss Virginia, like those are going to be the core memories. Um, so CSI work is a significant part of the work that you do as a state title holder. Obviously, like it's your passion project, and everyone that steps into the role has a different CSI. But then there's a lot of responsibilities that are consistent for every single title holder. Can you talk about some of those responsibilities that you took on that you will then hand over to the next Miss Virginia in a couple of weeks?
Yes. The organization is a volunteer organization and it works because people give so much to the organization and the girl. And a huge part of being Miss Virginia are our wonderful sponsors that support this program. So I have a sponsored apartment and a sponsored car, and I get sponsored clothing. So it's really important that you're able to go to these sponsors to thank them for these wonderful gifts that they're giving you consistently. Also being able to recruit new sponsors, finding people that can help the organization, and also social media management. That's part of, thanking the sponsors, so we have a sponsors tracking sheet where I can see every sponsor that we have and, how many social media posts do they get? How many visits do they get? So in addition to my school tour, which is planned and scheduled for me, I have a certain amount of sponsor visits, a certain amount of sponsor posts. So that's part of it. And then also recruiting, getting other young girls involved in the organization, whether that's through having certain visits that you do in high schools and colleges, and then through social media, being able to find girls through social media or just having creative content that draws those young ladies in, your personal community service initiative, and yes, I think that's it. Sponsors, community service, and then appearances and connections that you're able to make throughout the state. This year, I've had a unique opportunity to work with the governor and the first lady and to perform at the mansion. So also being able to garner connections and create appearances for yourself because there are a number of people that know about Miss Virginia and they request her, and these are the same people that request her every year. But then it's also your job to, raise awareness about the organization and create those opportunities for yourself.
What was the recruitment like specifically? I know like that's a big hot topic for women that want to recruit more to come into this organization and participate. We all like love it so much and we gain so much from it. We just really want to share the wealth and pay that forward. So what was your approach to recruitment and what were some of your successes this year?
Social media, and I think social media is so important. I know that's like the cliche answer, but I think some young ladies think it's like a secret club. They don't know exactly how to get involved. So it's really important that they not only see you in a picture with your crown and sash, but having, the website, specific details on how you can participate, things like that. And I think another great part has been education. So I want to be a professor and I have connections with universities. So being able to make appearances where the young girls are. So I was able to guest lecture in a business class where I talked about confidence and inflection and using your voice and things like that. But I was also able to talk about the Miss Virginia opportunity. And they had some young ladies that were also interested. And then through my community service initiative, I've been able to partner with organizations. And while I'm there to, do music to perform, I'm also able to talk about the Miss Virginia opportunity. So I think being able to combine opportunities that may be music focused or community service focused, but using them to also talk about here's this wonderful opportunity that I used to combine all of my interests.
Yeah, that's a perfect point. Like you are in so many different spaces all the time. I think it's one of the values of the Miss America opportunity for every single woman to have a unique initiative and passion project, like I mentioned, because you're reaching different people every single year. And you're doing a disservice if you're not also thinking, how can I strategically also benefit the organization or recruit while I'm doing this work that I love doing as well. Like part of your job is to think about and be creative in different ways that you can elevate the title and elevate the organization.
Yes. And a win that I had this year with recruiting, thinking about that business class that I was able to go to, that university, they have a university title holder. And so they were able to participate in Miss Virginia. So there's a rule about festivals and locals. So one of the young ladies that I met on that visit became her school's title holder, and they're able to compete in the Miss Virginia pageant. So just leveraging what I already have, this connection with education and academia, and being able to connect them to scholarship opportunities.
What would you say was the hardest part about your year?
Finding that time to take care of myself. Um, That was just really hard for me. I like to give everything I do 100%. I don't like letting people down. I want to do everything right. That's always been my thing. I want to do everything right. I don't want to do anything wrong. And I think losing my voice was the worst part of the year because as a singer, I've never lost my voice. I've never had any type of vocal issue. And I think that was really a wake up call to say, you're a grown up. You need to speak up for yourself and really take care of yourself. And your voice is something that you've worked so hard on practicing. You literally majored in it. So it was really important that I was able to speak up about that and take care of it.
Were there moments that you felt lonely?
Yes. I think, yes. I mean, it's a lonely job. You have a lot of people around you, when you win or you go to certain events, but then you get in your car and you drive 3 hours and you go back to the apartment and you're by yourself. But I think in those moments, I try to just focus on the impact and what I just did. I think sometimes when your highs are really high, like being a state title holder and meeting lots of people and taking lots of pictures, your lows feel really low. So I try to remind myself of that in the moment that I just did this amazing thing. I just met the governor. I just spoke to 100 kids. So in those moments when I'm feeling that, I'm trying to remind myself, what is the purpose? What is the impact? And I'm feeling this way because I have this enormous blessing.
Is there anything you would have done differently this year?
I think I would have came in with the mindset of taking care of myself.
Okay.
I like,
This is a theme.
because the voice thing really got me when that happened.
Mhm.
I think taking care of myself, speaking up for myself, I think not worrying about, upsetting people. I think when you're a people pleaser by nature, you try to not upset people. And I think it hurt me in the long run. And not saying there was something drastic that happened, but just little things like the voice thing and needing time off to recuperate from being sick, things like that. So just being an advocate for myself, knowing that I'm a respectful person, so everything comes from love and making self care a priority at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point too, and I want to hear more of your perspective on that because it's like you're talking about being a people pleaser, and so like you've like don't create waves, like do all the things that you can to be appreciative and do your job as the best as you can. And so I think maybe there was like we build this up in our head like it's going to be like some really bad thing if we do stand up for ourselves. But what was the actual experience when you did finally start saying I just can't right now?
We understand. I'm glad you said something. Or one great thing I learned along the way is always challenge people. Like sometimes someone will say something to you and you'll just sit with it. You'll take it, oh, that was kind of offensive, or I didn't like the way that felt. I feel attacked a little bit. But I think it's always important to ask a follow-up question. Like, what did you mean by that? And what I've learned is that sometimes it's not even what you think, or you might think someone's like critiquing, I don't know, the way you said something or what you wore. And really, they were just saying, my favorite color is red. I like when you wear red, not that I dislike you in the blue. So I think it's important to always just ask a clarifying question.
That is advice that I wish I would have had when I was competing, when I was a title holder, because yeah, like when you're already like tired or sensitive to things, like some of those little comments that literally don't mean anything, we can take and like perceive as something really horrible, and it kind of ruin our experience.
I think that was a big thing, like preparing for Miss America, when you have mock interviews and someone says, I would have liked to hear this. And you say, well, I said this. And then you ask a follow-up question. They said, oh, I just meant you should have added some more statistics in there. So you start on the spiral of, this is awful, I can't do this. And they just literally meant add more statistics.
I love that. I'm gonna just take that with me. Clarifying questions. Very, very important. What does life after the crown look like for you?
So I'm going into the fifth year of my PhD in something called Critical and Comparative Studies in Music. And I have 1 year left, and I'll be finishing my dissertation talking about music and community engagement. So basically what I lived through this year, and I'll be applying for professor jobs. So I'll still be impacting students. And I'm excited to use the connections with universities and the people that I met along the way to kind of help facilitate that process.
Has the grieving process started for you yet?
Oh gosh, yes. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid it. I'm trying to think happy thoughts. And it really hit me back in May because I had my last school visit. And like that's been the highlight of my year, meeting the kids and talking to them. And I had the last visit and I had to remind myself, well, you still have some more weeks of being Miss Virginia. And then I find myself like strolling through my phone, looking at memories and things like that. Um, but I just try to, it's hard. I wanted this so bad and I was blessed with it and I had a great time and I met wonderful people. It made a huge impact, but I have to remember that if I'm going into a new beginning, this next chapter, this one has to end. And whoever gets it next, that's the blessing that God has for them. So that keeps me positive, but it's hard. And my mom looks at me and she's like, it's okay, don't be sad. And then she'll say, well, I'm a little sad too, but
It really is a grieving process, just like so many things. And so let yourself feel all the feels and live in the and in the joy and the gratitude of it, but also the sadness of things changing because change is hard.
I'm trying to like pack the schedule. Forever Miss Virginians are telling me like you need to have a trip planned, have some things to do because there's going to be a big emptiness in your schedule and you don't want to just go back home and say, okay, now what do I do? So I'm going to go teach a theater camp. That'll keep me occupied.
Oh, beautiful. And that'll be, in a great like space for you to be in front of students and yeah, that'll be fulfilling. What is your hope for, okay, let me ask it this way. You have worked really hard to create an impact this year. And to some extent, like you have so much ownership of that. And like it becomes kind of like your baby, right, throughout the year. And so, what is your hope that the next Miss Virginia will continue carrying out like what you have started or that you carried on from the last woman in this role?
Charting your own path. I think that's something that I was able to do this year, just bringing music to the school tour, connections with universities, but that happened because of who I am and the connections that I already have and the things I was already doing. So I think it's important for the next person to assess their abilities and the things that they're already doing and they're already passionate about and to chart their own year. I think that's something that year to year we see state title holders do. They're able to use their abilities and bring what they have to the role. And I think that's what I hope for the next person. I think, it's either or. Sometimes someone charts their own territory and they make their own path using their unique gifts and talents. Or sometimes they see what the person before them did and they think they have to be a carbon copy of that, or that's the only thing that works. So I hope they just use their gifts and talents to make a difference.
I think that can be an insecurity and a limiting belief for a lot of women that are in this journey towards winning a local or winning state, or they're on their way to a national competition of like knowing they want to stand out, hearing that message of, bring your unique talents, bring your unique insights and passion and skills to the table. But I think one of the limiting beliefs can often be, I don't know what mine are, and I don't know that mine are strong enough. And like, how do I really figure that out? What would you say to them?
Hmm. I think that's difficult. I think I, when I first started pageants, I think what made it hard and made me feel not confident is that I was worried about finding those gifts and talents. Like I have this low voice and people would say speak higher and I would try to speak higher and I would try to be more bubbly or I would try to sing songs that I thought people would like or I would try to say answers that I thought people would like. Um, And it wasn't until I, sat with myself and said, okay, what do I think? What songs do I like? What songs resonate with me that I was able to have the most success? And I think it's important for people to be able to tell the difference between like opinion and advice or things that they need to improve, because some advice is really helpful. It's like, you should walk slower. That's helpful advice. But some, opinions like you should sing these types of songs, that's not really helpful. So I think being able to first sit with yourself and assess what are your gifts and your talents. And sometimes we think it's hard to do because we associate gifts and talents with like a job or a major in school, but they're the thing that comes naturally to us. So being able to assess and find what that is, or asking those around you, what do you think when I come around? What does that make you feel like? Being able to assess, and then also being able to tell the difference between, that comment that someone made to me, is that helpful? Can I use it and get better? Like, can I actually take it and improve myself? And then using that if it's helpful and it's useful.
Right. So as we wrap up, for sure, I want you to have the last word because you have just so much insight and love pouring out of you. So what what's on your mind that you want to make sure that everyone takes away from this, and maybe a beautiful way to bookend our conversation from the beginning when I shared your overall message and how you have approached your year. But from your own words.
Hmm. God is faithful. He fulfilled his promise to me. This was something I set out to do over 10 years ago, and no matter what it looked like, he prepared this perfect time for me. And in gratitude of him preparing this perfect time for me, I tried my best. I tried my best, and I always showed up and prayed that God's light will shine through. And he fulfilled that promise as well. And so I'm just so grateful to have had this moment and this opportunity, and to also just walk into the next season taking away all of the things that I learned from this year.
Thank you. What a beautiful way to wrap up this series with you. Carleah, you are truly just the embodiment of everything that you had just said. And I appreciate you so much for that. And I really hope that everyone listening really feels that love and encouragement from you as they listen to this conversation too, because I mean, everyone that I have talked to, every title holder in the Crowned and Candid series has come with their unique perspective, their unique journey to getting to where they are, their unique experiences of holding this title, and have grown in various ways. And so it's been so fascinating from where I sit to see all of that in conversations unfolding in front of me. And I have so much gratitude for the privilege that I have to sit here and have these conversations with you and like have a candid conversation with you about your unique experience, and to hear you be really open and full of love and full of heart and authentic in what you're saying. So thank you so much for being a part of this series and for helping me wrap it up in such a lovely way. And I'm just so thrilled for you to wrap up your year and look back with nothing but love for your experience and move forward with nothing but excitement and joy for what comes next.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. But also, thank you for creating the space for other title holders to listen in and to learn and to see the behind the scenes and learn about what this job is really about, and also just shining a light on all of us state title holder stories. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It really has been a privilege and a joy. So thanks again for being part of it. And to you all, my beautiful Sash and Soul community, thanks for sticking with me, for being a part of this journey as well. And I will be back next week with, I've been saying, the regularly scheduled programming with a lot of insight about kind of wrapping up state competition season, wrapping up the season of the Fearlessly Authentic Mastermind, and the things that I've really learned throughout this season working with clients from across the country, and having these conversations on Sash and Soul as well. So I will see you then. In the meantime, take care of yourselves and be well. We'll see you then. Bye. If you've been working so hard, but still feel like something's missing, then I want to personally invite you to schedule a free coaching consultation. This is for you if you're tired of overthinking every detail. You're doing everything you can to prepare, practicing your walk, your talent, interview, refining your paperwork, and staying up late analyzing every possible outcome. You put in the work, but still question if you're doing enough or if you are enough. So in just one call, we'll talk through where you're at, what's been holding you back, and how you can start showing up fully prepared to win the title and actually do the job once you get it. If you're looking for more than just surface level prep and you're ready to prepare with strategy, support, and confidence that actually lasts, I'd love to be part of your process. Head to the link in the show description to grab your spot, and I'll see you there.